HOA Karen slammed my daughter into a wall at her own wedding, I said, my voice shaking, not from fear, but from disbelief. And she's still standing here, smiling like she did the right thing. Trina Kessler, president of the Heatherbrook Village HOA board, didn't flinch. Her manicured hand still clutched her clipboard, the same one she'd waved like a weapon before she shoved my daughter into the stone arbor. Silra's veil was half torn, her bouquet crushed in her lap, and 30 wedding guests stared frozen between outrage and confusion. Trina tilted her head, calm and cruel. You people think rules don't apply just because there's a white dress involved? Her badge gleamed under the sun. This is an unauthorized event. I'm within my rights. She had no idea that the arbor she slammed Silra into wasn't just decorative. It was equipped with micro-heat and motion sensors. And every second of that shove, from her hand on my daughter's shoulder to the smirk afterward, was captured in high definition and already syncing to my private server. She thought she'd ended a wedding. She didn't realize she'd just started a reckoning. Subscribe right now, because this video doesn't just show what happened next. It changed how every HOA in this state writes their bylaws. My name's Colbrand Edivane. I don't argue with people like Trina. I audit them. I'm a risk management auditor, the kind who gets called when someone trips, slips, or sues. I study patterns of negligence, liability exposure, and coverage violations for insurance firms that hate losing money. That means I know exactly how to make someone like Trina lose hers. But this wasn't about professional payback. It was about my wife. The arbor Trina used to injure my daughter wasn't just a wedding prop. It was a monument. My late wife, Mira, designed it during her chemo sessions. I built it stone by stone after she passed, using bricks from her childhood home. She used to joke that if heaven had a doorway, it would look like that arch. My daughter, Silra, chose to get married beneath it because it was the one place her mother still felt alive. I filed every document by the book, notified the HOA 30 days in advance, even proposed a noise reduction plan. Trina never responded, just mailed back a warning letter saying, private events with non-residents or sound equipment are considered commercial gatherings and require board review. Translation, you didn't ask for my permission, so I'll find a reason to ruin it. When she marched into that wedding mid-ceremony, clipboard in hand, I thought she'd at least yell, maybe shut off the power or threaten a fine. I didn't expect her to lay hands on my daughter in front of witnesses. The sound it made when Silra hit the arbor wasn't loud, but it was final, like something sacred breaking. Guests froze. Someone screamed. I stepped forward, but Trina lifted her chin, already rewriting the scene. In her mind, she resisted compliance. She snapped. You people can't just... You assaulted her, I said. Trina's nostrils flared. You think you can threaten me? You know who I am? I do, I said evenly. And I know what happens when someone in your position violates civil liability under recorded observation. That made her blink. Her gaze flicked to the small badge clipped to my belt, a county-certified risk assessor ID. She'd seen it before, last year, when I helped the HOA avoid a lawsuit over a broken playground swing. Back then, she'd called me a useful neighbor. Today, I was her worst-case scenario. As Silra sat trembling on the grass, a wedding guest, a woman I barely knew named Briar, kept her phone raised, recording everything. I didn't stop her. In my line of work, evidence is oxygen. When the police arrived 12 minutes later, Trina tried to claim community enforcement rights. Officer Roussel shut that down fast. Ma'am, he said, you touched a resident on private property. That's not enforcement. That's assault. Trina didn't get arrested that day, not yet. But every guest left knowing what they'd seen. And before midnight, that clip, captioned HOA President Attacks Bride During Ceremony, was already circulating. I watched it loop once, twice, 3 times. My daughter's gasp, the fall, the smirk, and I swore that if the law wouldn't handle Trina Kessler, I would, through the one thing she couldn't silence, exposure. Trina didn't show up the next morning, but her work did. Taped to my front door was a violation notice printed in red, not 1, but 3. Failure to obtain event permit, unapproved temporary structure, exceeding noise threshold, all dated retroactively, as if her assault the day before hadn't happened at all, or worse, like it had been justified. The ink was still fresh. The stapled pages snapped in the breeze, fluttering like a cheap apology no one asked for. Inside, Silra sat on the couch with an ice pack pressed against her shoulder. Her fiancé, Owen, hovered nearby like he could shield her from paperwork. But even he looked stunned when he opened the HOA portal and saw the update. Property flagged for compliance review. Potential lien pending. I didn't say a word. I just grabbed the notice, scanned it, and filed it into a folder I'd already labeled Trina Violation Pattern, because I knew what she was doing now. The same thing I'd seen petty executives do when cornered. They double down, escalate, distract, punish. She hadn't gotten the reaction she wanted yesterday. The guests didn't applaud her. The cops didn't back her up. So now she was trying to bury us in process. The irony? She was doing it in writing. I walked out to the street and looked around. The arbor was still standing, untouched, silent, and now marked with a small orange flag staked into the lawn. It looked like a construction warning, but it wasn't. It was HOA code for under enforcement review. They only used it for derelict fences and abandoned grills. Silra joined me, her voice quiet. "You're not going to take it down, are you?" "No," I said. "They're going to wish I had." By noon, neighbors started talking. A few avoided eye contact entirely, especially the ones who served on the board. But others looked guilty, like they'd watched the video and realized something ugly had been standing behind the podium all this time. The one who didn't avoid me was Levi Morin. I spotted him walking his dog, an old bloodhound named Bishop, by the storm drain near the retention pond. He saw me, paused, then kept walking, but slower, deliberate. I didn't call out, I just waited. And sure enough, Levi crossed the street and stopped at the edge of my lawn. "She okay?" he asked, voice low. "She's bruised and furious," I said. "Not in that order." Levi nodded. His gray cap was pulled low, and his expression was hard to read. "Can't believe she did that," he muttered. "She?" I prompted. He didn't answer, just scratched Bishop's ear like it would buy him time. "You're vice treasurer, right?" I asked. "That makes you second chain of record for property dispute notices." His jaw worked. "I don't sign them, just manage transfer of dues stuff." "But you saw the violation letters." A beat passed. "I get copied," he said finally. "Not consulted." I looked him dead in the eye. "You watched her shove my daughter. You heard her threaten us before it happened. And now your name's on a notice that says, 'We violated noise restrictions.'" Levi exhaled slowly. "I didn't sign off on those. You know that." "Doesn't matter. You're still part of the board that let this happen." Bishop gave a soft whine, and Levi tugged the leash, more out of habit than control. "You know how she is. Once she gets locked onto something, she's not a storm, Levi. She's not some force of nature that can't be stopped. She made a decision, and you backed her by staying quiet." He looked like he'd swallowed a rock. "I didn't back her," he said quietly. "I just didn't stop her." And then he walked off. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. Levi had just shown his first crack, not in loyalty, but in conscience. That afternoon, I checked the HOA portal again. Trina had uploaded a new community bulletin. The headline read, "Order, not emotion. HOA responds to misinformation and viral smears." Her opening line? "We regret yesterday's misunderstandings, but Heatherbrook must always prioritize safety and community standards over spectacle." She really thought she could rewrite the truth. That footage would prove her wrong. But footage alone doesn't destroy people like Trina. Exposure does. And I'd spent my career perfecting the slow kill of public accountability. The HOA board met every other Wednesday in the old stone clubhouse near the fountain. That week, they added an emergency session. Closed to residents, of course. But I went anyway. I didn't expect to be let in. I expected the door to be locked, the blinds drawn, and the minutes scrubbed. I wasn't wrong. When I got there, the windows were blacked out with paper. A taped sign read, "Board session in progress. No entry permitted." But what caught my attention wasn't the door. It was the man standing 10 feet to the right, nervously lighting a cigarette, even though this was a no-smoking zone. Levi Morin, HOA Vice Treasurer, still wearing his name badge like it meant something, but holding it like it weighed too much. He saw me, paused, then flicked the lighter shut and stepped away from the wall like he didn't want to be seen next to it. "You think I'm here to make a scene?" I asked. He shook his head. "If you were, you would have brought a camera." I gave him a look. "Didn't have to. One's already doing the work. Levi rubbed the back of his neck. You got her on video clear as day. I have her voice too. She said it wasn't personal, that it was about visual harmony. You ever hear someone say something that cold with a smile on their face? Levi didn't answer. You knew it was wrong, I continued. You watched her do it. He let out a slow breath. You think I haven't been replaying it in my head? I studied him. There was something real under the guilt, hesitation, but not malice. Like he'd joined the board to be helpful once. Like he hadn't signed up for this kind of damage. Then why haven't you said anything? I asked. He looked down at the concrete. You've seen how she operates. She doesn't just run the board, she runs the people on it. Half of them are scared of her. The other half owe her something. What about you? I used to think she was just strict, detail-focused. I didn't realize she'd go this far. There was a pause. She called it a calculated deterrent, he added. Said the board had to set the tone for summer. I stared at him. She said that? He nodded once. After you left. Before the vote on your violation letters. I clenched my jaw. Did you vote? No, I left the room. That's not a no. He looked away. That was all I needed to know. The board door opened then, Trina stepping out first, flanked by two others from the committee like she was running a press conference. She spotted me instantly. Her lips curled into something between a grin and a dare. Mr. Edivane, she said, you're not on the agenda. Didn't need to be, I replied. Just wanted to see how damage control looks up close. She gave a theatrical shrug. The board is simply upholding policy. I'm sorry if your daughter's emotional state has confused the matter. She was assaulted. She was non-compliant. Levi flinched at that word. I turned to him. Still think silence keeps your hands clean? Trina followed my gaze and narrowed her eyes. Levi, if you have concerns, the proper place is inside, not in the parking lot. Levi didn't move. His arms were stiff at his sides, fists curled tight. He didn't say a word, but he didn't follow her either. Trina studied him for another second, then walked off, heels tapping like gunfire. He waited until she was out of earshot. You don't know what it's like in there, you challenge her, and you're gone. Doesn't matter how long you've lived here. I kept my voice low. You think you're the only one she's done this to? He looked at me sharply. I've got 3 neighbors who've had structures flagged for things built years ago. I've got a woman across the block who got fined for wind chimes. Wind chimes. He gave a dry, bitter laugh. She said they caused auditory dissonance. She causes something worse. For a long second, he didn't speak. Then he pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, showed me a photo, grainy, time-stamped, of Trina standing over the arbor from a different angle. She didn't know the clubhouse cameras were still on, he said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. I don't have much, he said, but I might have more than you think. And just like that, Levi Morin, the man who watched and did nothing, took his first step toward doing something. 3 days after the wedding, another notice showed up, this one more aggressive than the last. It wasn't printed on standard HOA letterhead. It was embossed, sealed, and hand-delivered by a board member I didn't recognize. The envelope wasn't addressed to resident. It was addressed to Colbrand Edivane, risk auditor. That wasn't an accident. The letter declared the arbor a structural hazard subject to forced removal, citing HOA subsection 3.3d, a line I knew like the back of my hand. The problem? That clause had nothing to do with private installations. It applied to commercial properties only. They'd just borrowed the language and hoped I wouldn't notice. What really caught my attention was the closing line. Failure to comply within 72 hours will trigger liens and possible third-party removal at the homeowner's expense. Trina wasn't backing down. She was doubling down hard. I dropped the letter onto my desk and leaned back in my chair. My laptop chimed. Another email from the HOA portal. Final notice, structure review escalated to Executive Enforcement Committee. Executive Enforcement Committee? That wasn't even a standing body. They were making up procedural theater now. I opened the Heatherbrook bylaws again. I'd already gone through them once, but now I read them like I would a contract under review. My fingers hovered over highlighted terms: event classification, private fixture, discretionary review rights. Trina was twisting gray areas into enforcement cudgels, not new, but reckless this time. She wasn't citing the rules, she was reinterpreting them in real time, hoping fear would do the rest. And if that failed, she'd fabricate an authority to intimidate compliance. I clicked over to my documentation folder, evidence files, video timestamps, HOA notices, resident testimonials. I tagged each asset with the same 3 labels: date, violations claimed, actual bylaw. The pattern was clear. None of her citations lined up with actual clauses. Most were fragments pulled out of context. The arbor wasn't in violation. The event wasn't in violation. What was in violation was her weaponization of power. I needed more than moral outrage. I needed precision. The kind of precision that dissects public lies with clean, admissible cuts. The kind that couldn't be denied once it left my hands. That afternoon, I drove to City Hall. The Office of Zoning Records was buried on the 2nd floor behind a wall of dusty filing cabinets and a clerk named Saul, who'd been working there since the Nixon administration. He looked up when I walked in, then reached for the drawer before I even said my name. "Colbrand Edivane?" he asked. I nodded. She already called. Wanted the arbor's compliance files pulled. Said it was urgent. He raised a brow. Told her I'd only release it to the owner. He slid the folder across the counter. I flipped it open. There it was, my original permit, stamped, approved, and signed off 7 months ago. Dimensions, materials, placement coordinates, soundproofing measures. Everything filed and passed. "She really doesn't like being told no, huh?" Saul muttered. "She calls it protecting the neighborhood's character." He snorted. "So did the last president, until a gazebo fell on her Prius." I scanned the last page. Trina's request was documented but flagged with a note. "Request denied. No current basis for inspection." Exactly what I needed. I stepped out into the parking lot just as my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a forwarded message from Breyer. The video had cracked 800,000 views. More importantly, she'd captioned the newest clip, "When HOA leadership turns into assault. This is what they don't want you to see." It was gaining traction in the comments. HOA reform groups, legal channels. Even a retired city councilman had replied, "This is why unchecked board power is dangerous." I took a breath. It was working. The pressure wasn't coming from a courtroom. It was coming from the ground up, from every person who'd ever been harassed over a mailbox color or a garden gnome. I drove back to Heatherbrook just in time to see 2 HOA board members standing outside my house, clipboard in hand, staring at the arbor like it had personally offended them. They didn't see me, but I saw the way they looked at it, uncertain, a little too careful. They weren't sure anymore, not about the rules, not about Trina, and that meant the first fracture had formed. By morning, the arbor had a fresh marker, this time a red sticker taped directly to the stone. Unsafe, subject to immediate HOA removal. That was new, not a code, not a citation. Just a threat in bold font. There was no bylaw reference, no seal, no signature, just a sticker designed to scare. I peeled it off slowly, folded it into a square, and set it on my workbench inside. I wasn't going to throw it away. I was going to catalog it, just like everything else. Breyer texted me an hour later. "Need to show you something. I got the clean audio." I met her at a cafe halfway between Heatherbrook and the interstate. She looked tired. Messy bun, oversized hoodie, earbuds looped around her neck. But her eyes were sharp, focused. "I finally boosted the audio from the ceremony footage," she said as she opened her laptop. "Had to filter the music bleed and crowd noise, but here." She clicked play. There it was, Trina's voice, crystal clear, snarling through the chaos. "I don't care if she's in a dress. It's unauthorized. She's not immune to enforcement." Then, "Make an example of this one." My jaw locked. Breyer paused the video. I didn't catch that line the first time. Too much going on. But now, I nodded. "It's enough." "You think so?" "No, I know so." The video already showed her shoving Silra. But the audio, that was intent. That was premeditated language, a directive, not a reaction, not an accident. That made all the difference. Breyer looked at me carefully. "You going public with this?" "Not yet. Not without one more piece." She tilted her head. "Like what?" "Proof the board knew she was doing this. Not just that she acted alone, but that she acted with silence behind her. Her expression turned wary. You mean Levi? He's halfway there. I need him to step fully over. I left the cafe with a flash drive in my pocket and a plan forming faster than I could write it down. Back at home, Silra was in the backyard, sitting under the arbor again. Her shoulder was still stiff, but she'd refused the sling. She was tracing the cracks in the stone where she hit, eyes glassy but dry. You're building something, aren't you? She said, without looking at me. I stepped onto the grass. Not building, lining up the foundation. For what? For her collapse. She nodded once. Good. That night, I sent Levi a single text. Meet me at the arbor, 10 p.m. No HOA ears. It took him 12 minutes to reply. Fine, but I can't be seen helping you. When he arrived, he parked 2 blocks away and came through the side alley like a man sneaking into his own guilt. He didn't speak until we were standing under the arch. She's escalating, he said quietly. You know that, right? She doesn't have a choice. It's the only move she knows. He looked around, then at me. I've got 2 board recordings. One from last month, where she told us to find ways to preempt summer violations, and another from the night after the wedding. What's in that one? She says, if we make an exception here, we lose the entire structure. People need to see consequences. My blood ran cold. She framed it as structural integrity? Levi nodded. The board didn't vote on that. She just declared it. Send me both. He hesitated. You going to leak them? I'm going to package them, with Breyer's audio, the footage, and the HOA's own fake notices. Then I'm going to let the world decide. Levi looked down at the stones. She's not going to recover from this. She shouldn't. His voice dropped. I stayed quiet too long. I met his eyes. Then stop staying quiet. He handed me a thumb drive. You'll know when to use it. Then he walked off, shoulders hunched like he'd just unburdened a decade. Inside, I loaded the files, tagged the audio, and labeled the folder. Trigger drop, full package. The pieces were now in place. The story Trina was trying to write, one of order, authority, and compliance, was about to be overwritten. And this time, she wouldn't be the narrator. The next morning, I woke up to silence. Not peace, silence. The kind that feels wrong, the kind that follows a plan too quiet to trust. No new notices, no flags in the yard, no barking emails from the HOA portal. That's how I knew Trina was repositioning. I opened my laptop and checked the portal's community feed. The usual passive-aggressive comments were gone, replaced by a new post from the HOA board. Due to rising tensions and digital misinformation campaigns, the Heatherbrook board will temporarily suspend public-facing statements. We urge residents to direct concerns through official channels. Translation? They were sealing the ship. No leaks, no public conflict. She was holding her breath, and likely preparing something behind the curtain. Silra came in holding her phone. Her voice was tight. Someone posted pictures of me on Nextdoor. I took the phone. It wasn't the video. It was stills, screenshots grainy and zoomed in, of her sitting under the arbor, marked with snide captions like, "Is this the new standard of HOA obedience?" And, "When homeowners think rules don't apply to them." I scrolled. The comments were split. Some outraged, others parroting Trina's language. "She's trying to discredit you," I said. "Make you the problem. Divert the conversation from the assault to community disruption." Silra's jaw clenched. "Let her! I'm not hiding." She didn't know it, but that was the last trigger I needed. By noon, I had the video fully edited. I laid Trina's voice over slow-motion clips of the incident, added timestamps, the permit, screenshots, the red flag photos. Breyer added a closing segment, her screen recording of Trina's email to the zoning office, requesting removal of a permitted private structure on false hazard claims. Every frame was legal, no embellishments, just facts, timeline, authority misuse, impact. I named the file the Heatherbrook Pattern, and I didn't release it, not yet. Instead, I sent it to 5 people, not news outlets, not HOA watchdogs, insurance adjusters, contacts I'd worked with on corporate audits, people who evaluated risk and exposure the way I did, with calculators and spreadsheets and cold legal thresholds. It took 38 minutes for the first reply to come in. "This goes public, and the HOA's policy coverage is exposed. You've got them pinned. Want me to forward to liability counsel?" I answered with a single word, soon. That same afternoon, 2 private contractors showed up outside the arbor. No markings, unfamiliar truck. They walked around it, took measurements, snapped photos, then left without a word. They didn't knock, they didn't tape a notice, just evaluated like they were assessing a demolition job, Trina's shadow operation. I called city zoning. Saul picked up again. Edivane, he said, already knowing why I was calling. We didn't send anyone. You sure? I've got no open orders, no hazard tags, and if someone removes that arbor without a standing code violation, they're trespassing. That was all I needed to hear. I installed a second camera that night, angle fixed directly on the arbor, synced to motion alerts with audio triggers. The first one had caught the push. This one would catch the retaliation. Then I printed a laminated copy of the permit, zip-tied it to the arbor, and wrote in bold red marker across the bottom, "Any attempted removal constitutes unauthorized property damage under city code. Camera monitored, data logged." I wasn't threatening violence, I was threatening litigation. And in HOA worlds, that's the equivalent of a loaded weapon. By sunset, Breyer had the clip queued in her scheduling software. Levi confirmed a board meeting was happening the next night, closed door again. But he also confirmed something else. "She's trying to lock in emergency power," he said quietly, claiming the viral backlash is threatening HOA authority. Wants to vote on temporary executive control, no public minutes. I didn't blink. Then we were dropping the video just before that meeting. He was silent a beat. "You're sure?" "She's trying to rewrite the rules while everyone's distracted. That ends tomorrow." He paused. "You'll be ready?" I was born ready. I just needed the right trigger. And thanks to Trina's unchecked arrogance, I finally had it. Levi arrived 10 minutes early. He didn't park out front this time. He walked. No badge, no clipboard, just a man who'd finally decided which side he was on. He looked around like he expected someone to be watching. "They're holding the vote tonight," he said as I opened the side gate. "Special session. She wants executive control for 90 days. No resident appeals, no internal overrides. She called it an emergency? Classified it as a threat to neighborhood stability," he muttered. Cited the escalation of misinformation clause. I let the words settle. "So she's spinning exposure as terrorism." Levi ran a hand through his hair. "She knows the video's coming. I don't know how, but she does. She's trying to lock the board before it drops." We stepped into the backyard. The arbor stood quiet, framed by string lights that hadn't been removed since the wedding. Beneath them, I laid out a fold-out table, laptop open, audio files queued. Everything was ready. Levi sat without asking. He looked tired, but this time the guilt wasn't dragging him. It was driving him. "You said you had more," I reminded him. He nodded. "I started recording the Zoom calls after the wedding, not just the board ones, the ones she held in secret." He slid a second flash drive across the table. She didn't use HOA emails, used her personal account. But she logged into the board admin portal on screen. "I've got footage." I plugged it in and scanned the folder. Dozens of recordings. One stood out. 2025, 10/12, Trina exec draft. Ball, P4. I opened it. Trina's face filled the screen, flushed, smiling, a glass of wine in one hand. "We let them get away with one arbor wedding," she was saying, "and next month it'll be baby showers, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras. We lose the tone of this place. We lose the property value." A male voice responded off screen. "But Colbrand's not some outsider." "I don't care," she snapped. "It's not about him. It's about precedent. People follow what they see. If I don't hold the line now, I'll lose the board before winter." Then she raised her glass and laughed. I paused the video. "She said it out loud," I murmured. "Plenty of times," Levi said. "I've got more. Her whole strategy was to frame your family as a threat, to the brand of Heatherbrook." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then looked at Levi. "Why now? Why are you finally giving me everything?" He didn't answer right away. Then he pulled something from his coat, a printed letter, HOA letterhead. It was addressed to him. "Effective immediately," he read. "You are placed under internal review for breach of confidentiality and potential misconduct." "They're coming after you," I said. He gave a tired nod. "It showed up this morning. No vote, no hearing. Just a letter in my mailbox." Trina was gutting the board before the video even dropped. "I've lived here 12 years, he said quietly. "I served on the board for 6. I joined to help, to fix speed bumps and broken lamps. And now, I'm part of a machine that ruins families because a woman didn't like seeing joy outside her control." "You're not part of it anymore," I said. He looked at me. "Promise me you'll use it all." "I will. No restraint. No mercy." He stood, zipped his coat, and looked once more at the arbor. "She cracked the stone, you know." I followed his gaze. "She cracked more than that," I said. He nodded, then disappeared back into the shadows between the houses. Inside, I laid out the timeline one last time. Breyer's cleaned footage, my permit scans, Trina's direct quotes, Levi's recordings, the internal HOA documents from city zoning, and now this. Trina on video, openly declaring cultural cleansing through regulation. I renamed the master file, Trina Pattern, Full Send, Final, MP4. Then I opened my email, attached the file, and typed a short message to Breyer. "Scheduled drop for 6:45 p.m. Board meets at 7. Let's make sure the world watches them panic in real time." At exactly 6:45 p.m., Breyer hit publish. I didn't need her to tell me. I saw it happen. Not on YouTube, not on Instagram, but in the behavior of the neighborhood. 3 board members were already walking toward the clubhouse when their phones buzzed. I watched from my driveway as one of them stopped mid-step, eyes frozen on the screen. Another turned back to their car without saying a word. The third one looked up, searching for something that wasn't there, like someone had just flipped a switch and all the oxygen had left the street. The video was live. In the first 10 minutes, it passed 11,000 views. At 20, it cracked 45,000. And by the time the closed-door board meeting began, Yamazi Trina Pattern was trending 4th in the state. I sat in my office monitoring comment threads like a surgeon tracking vitals. HOA victims across the country were flooding in, sharing their stories, their receipts, their rage. It was no longer about just me, or Silra, or even the arbor. It was about every person who'd ever been fined for hanging wind chimes, for having a discolored fence post, for putting up a pride flag or a lawn chair 1 inch too close to the sidewalk. Trina had made herself a symbol. I'd just lit the fuse. At 7:03 p.m., I received a call, not from Levi, from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I received a text from the HOA email address. Urgent. Community advisory response in progress. Legal counsel has been engaged. Cease further escalation until board review. That wasn't a warning. It was a flinch. I walked outside. The lights in the clubhouse were on, shadows moving behind drawn blinds. But the windows on the east side weren't fully covered. I walked along the sidewalk slowly until I could see in. Trina was at the head of the table, hands flying, voice rising, her mouth twisted in frustration. 2 board members sat rigid. One, Tom Baird, the secretary, was already holding a printed transcript of the video in his lap. Another had a laptop open, pausing and replaying Trina's line. "Make an example of this one?" It echoed through the glass. I turned and headed back home. Breyer called as I stepped inside. "It's happening? I know. Have you checked your inbox?" I pulled it up. A new message sat at the top. Subject: Insurance Risk Evaluation. Triggered board liability under review. It was from Nassar and Locke, a commercial insurance compliance firm I'd worked with on several commercial audits. Attached was a memo flagged urgent and marked as potential breach of policy protection due to elected misconduct. I opened it. The last line read, "If the incident is confirmed, Heatherbrook Village HOA may be suspended from umbrella liability coverage pending board restructure and policy revision." That was the bullet. That was what people like Trina feared most. Not public shame, but financial collapse. No insurance meant no protection. Every fine, every letter, every enforcement action became a personal risk. They'd be sued directly, without coverage buffer. Personal assets on the line. I replied with a single confirmation and attached every file Levi had provided. Video, audio, transcripts, Zoom call, metadata. Nothing redacted. I stared at the arbor through the window. Light filtered down through the string bulbs. Silra had left a single flower tucked into the stone crack. The same one that had bruised her shoulder. The bruise was fading, but the story wasn't. At 7:39 p.m., my phone rang again. This time, it was Levi. "She's trying to push the vote," he whispered. "Two are with her, two are against. She just asked for emergency executive override." And I stalled it. Told them we need a motion to review the policy. Bought us 5 minutes. Good. Because in 10, the HOA's insurance agent is forwarding that breach memo to every board member with a voting seat. Silence. Then, "It's over, isn't it?" "No," I said. "It ends when she's removed, publicly, and when the arbor is declared permanent." Another silence, then a breath. "Then I'll hold the floor as long as you need." I hung up and stared at the email again. This wasn't a video anymore. This was evidence, strategy, leverage. And Trina Kessler had officially become a financial risk. The email hit the board inboxes at 7:44 p.m. Trina didn't know at first. She was mid-sentence, halfway through a rant about community image when Tom Baird's phone buzzed, then Marissa's, then Levi's. Within seconds, the mood in the room shifted. Tom glanced at the screen, blanched, then looked straight at Trina. "Did you see this?" "What now?" she snapped. He rotated his phone so she could see. The logo at the top of the email was unmistakable. Nassar and Locke Risk Management, Corporate Division. Underneath, in bold, breach of policy notification. Liability coverage frozen pending review. Trina's mouth opened, closed. Marissa stood up, papers of V trembling in her hand. "They froze our coverage?" "No," Trina said flatly. "They can't do that without an internal ruling. It's just a scare tactic." Tom pushed back from the table. "No, it's not. This came with the board audit packet. We're listed as an at-risk organization. Our umbrella policy is suspended pending removal of the liable agent." Levi said nothing. He didn't have to. Trina's voice dropped low. "This is a smear, manufactured drama by someone bitter his little arbor party got flagged." Levi looked up then. "You shoved a bride into a stone wall, Trina. It was an enforcement action. You said, make an example of her in the footage." "I didn't mean—" "You meant it," he said, louder now. "You just didn't expect the world to hear it." Tom nodded. "We're exposed now. If anyone files a claim, we're personally liable." Marissa, still standing, whispered, "My name's on those violation letters. You made me sign them." Trina straightened. "I protected this neighborhood from chaos." "You protected yourself," Levi said. "You built power by turning neighbors into suspects." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Tom cleared his throat. "I motion we suspend President Kessler pending full liability review and conduct audit." Marissa didn't hesitate. "Seconded." Trina's eyes flicked around the room. "You can't be serious. You're going to hang me out over a staged video and a few angry commenters?" Levi met her gaze. "No, we're going to hang you out over everything." Outside, the clubhouse door opened. I was already standing on the sidewalk when the board filed out. Trina came out last, her stride stiff, face pale beneath the makeup. She didn't look at me, not directly, but her steps faltered when she passed me, not out of guilt, out of calculation. She was already measuring what she'd lost. Levi peeled off from the group and walked straight over. "She's suspended, pending removal vote." "When?" 2 days, full community meeting." "And the arbor?" He smiled, small but certain. "Motion filed to grandfather it in under Section 7.2, resident-created memorial structures." My chest eased. "Good. There's more," he added. "Tom wants you to attend as a community witness." "I will." Levi glanced over his shoulder at Trina. She stood alone by her car, staring at her phone like it could undo what had just happened. "She's going to retaliate," he said. "I'm counting on it," I replied. He raised an eyebrow. "Because if she tries, it'll be public, emotional, loud, and it'll make the final vote even easier." Levi nodded. "You planned all this?" "No," I said honestly. I responded like someone who's spent 20 years watching liars collapse under their own pressure. He smiled again. "You're good at that." "I have to be." "Why?" I looked toward the arbor, the light catching the etched stone near the top. My wife's name was carved there, Mira, right where Silra's veil had caught during the fall. "Because some legacies are worth protecting," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't need to. We parted ways quietly. No handshakes, no congratulations. Just a mutual understanding between two men who had finally chosen the same side, the right one. Back inside, I checked the video again. It had crossed 1.8 million views, and in the comments, someone had already posted a copy of the insurance memo. Trina's name highlighted. The internet didn't wait for votes. It started writing consequences immediately. The community meeting was set for Friday night at the recreation hall. By Wednesday morning, the neighborhood was already split into two camps, the ones pretending nothing had happened, and the ones who couldn't stop talking about it. Lawn chairs appeared outside front doors again. A "Happy Fall, Y'all" flag fluttered on a porch that had been bare since Trina's seasonal decor finds last year. It was subtle, but it was happening. People were breathing again, testing the air without asking permission first. But Trina wasn't gone yet. That afternoon, a white sedan pulled into my driveway. No markings, no HOA tags. A man in a pressed shirt and blazer stepped out and introduced himself as Mitchell Fenn, legal liaison representing select board members in an advisory capacity. He handed me a sealed envelope. I didn't open it right away. I watched him walk back to his car like he didn't expect a word of conversation, like this part didn't require dialogue, just procedure. Inside the envelope was a cease and desist letter. It claimed that the video I'd helped publish constituted reputational defamation, emotional distress, and potential violation of neighborhood harmony clauses, citing bylaws I knew didn't apply to digital expression. It wasn't a real threat. It was a scarecrow, meant to posture, not hold. Still, I scanned it, logged it, and added it to the folder labeled Trina, post-exposure aggression. She was trying to claw her way back, and she was using proxies now. Silra read the letter and rolled her eyes. She really thinks you're going to back down after everything? She's not talking to me, I said. She's talking to everyone else, trying to make me look dangerous, unreasonable. Owen stepped into the kitchen with his laptop. Too late for that. The video's at 2.1 million, and someone just mirrored it onto 3 HOA watchdog sites. I turned to him. Which ones? Covenant Watch, Overstepped, and something called Gnome Justice. I nodded. Good. By nightfall, the recreation hall had its lights on early. Folding chairs were being stacked inside. Someone had placed water bottles on a table near the podium. Levi texted me around 9. She's pushing for a proxy vote block, trying to get old-timers to sign early forms. I replied, doesn't matter. The audio alone disqualifies her. Keep them nervous. He sent back, already are. Marissa's out. Tom's teetering. The next day, HOA mailboxes lit up with a new community reminder from the board. It read, "The recent public attention on Heather Brook is regrettable and unrepresentative of our values. While some individuals have chosen to escalate personal matters into viral campaigns, we believe residents deserve facts, not outrage. Attend Friday's meeting to hear the full story, without edits, without bias." I couldn't help but smile. Trina was still playing from the old handbook, double down, deflect, spin. But what she didn't realize was that the edits she kept accusing me of making didn't exist. The footage was raw, the audio untouched. Her words were her downfall, and she spoke them too proudly to ever walk them back. That night, I received another message. Not a threat, not from a lawyer, from a woman named Darlene, 3 streets over. We've never met. I lost my son to cancer last year. We built a bench in our yard where he used to sit. She made us take it down. Thank you for what you're doing. That message hit harder than anything Trina could throw. It reminded me why the arbor mattered, why the stone, the memory, the act of standing firm meant more than bylaws and fake committees. It wasn't about a rule, it was about erasure. And now the neighborhood was remembering how to speak again. The recreation hall filled up faster than anyone expected. Folding chairs ran out by 6:50. By 7:10, people were standing in the aisles, some shoulder to shoulder in the back. Others pressed up near the windows. A few brought their own chairs. One woman stood with her arms crossed beside a stroller. The air felt different, not hostile, not yet, but charged. Quiet murmurs rippled through the space, but no one spoke too loudly. Everyone was watching, waiting. The podium sat in the center like a trial bench, and standing next to it, arms stiff at his sides, was Levi. He gave me a nod when I entered and took my seat near the middle row. I didn't need to be front and center. I wasn't the voice tonight. I had already spoken, through footage, evidence, and silence. Tonight was theirs. Tom Baird, still technically secretary, stood and tapped the mic. This session is called under emergency provision by board members per Section 9.1b to determine the immediate future of board leadership. The agenda concerns President Trina Kessler. A rustle passed through the room like wind. Trina was already at the far end of the table. She stood slowly, her expression practiced, calm, neutral, like none of this fazed her. But she gripped her binder tighter than usual. "I know we've all seen things," she began, her voice smooth, too smooth. "And I recognize the emotions some of you are feeling. But Heatherbrook doesn't run on emotion. It runs on rules, on standards." The crowd didn't respond. "This smear campaign," she continued, "was built from a distorted moment, a video cut for outrage, a clip intended to humiliate rather than inform. I acted in accordance with community protection guidelines." She lifted a printout. "The arbor in question was not approved. The event was not reviewed. My intervention was not an attack. It was prevention." That was when Levi stepped up. "You shoved a bride," he said, voice calm, no mic needed. "In front of witnesses, on private property, under a permitted structure. That's not prevention, Trina. That's assault." Gasps fluttered from the crowd. Trina turned toward him. "You've been compromised. You were part of this slander." Levi didn't flinch. "I was part of the silence, and I won't be anymore." He turned to the audience. "You've all seen the video. Some of you watched the full version. Some of you haven't. But let me be clear. What you saw was not altered. The full audio is public. Her statements, her intent, it's all documented." Tom nodded. "And the board has received official communication from the HOA's insurance provider. As of this morning, Heatherbrook is under policy review. Coverage is suspended until leadership is resolved." That landed like a crack. Several heads turned. People murmured. Someone whispered, "That's why the legal fund email went out." Trina's voice sharpened. "This is character assassination, not governance." A woman in the third row stood up. "You fined me $250 for hanging string lights for my kid's birthday. You threatened to lien my house over a sandbox." Another man raised his hand. "You banned my wheelchair ramp because it didn't match the aesthetic tone." The room stirred louder now. Marissa, one of the remaining board members, stood. "I move that the current board vote to remove President Trina Kessler, effective immediately under Section 9.3, abuse of authority, exposure of liability, and breach of resident trust." Tom didn't wait. "Seconded." They turned to Levi. He nodded. "Aye." 3 votes, majority. Trina didn't sit. She didn't protest. She walked. Binder still clutched, jaw tight. She passed the aisle where I sat, eyes flicking toward me just once. But I didn't blink, because this wasn't vengeance. It was gravity. As she stepped through the doors, no one applauded, no one cheered, they just exhaled. And for the first time in months, Heatherbrook felt like a neighborhood again. 2 days later, I stood under the arbor as the new board gathered in my backyard. Not for ceremony, not for drama, for record. Marissa held the clipboard this time. Her voice was steady, respectful. "We've completed the formal review of the arbor's permit, materials, and installation timeline," she said. "The board votes to classify it as a permanent memorial fixture under Section 7.2 of the Heatherbrook Guidelines. It is now exempt from seasonal review, modification notices, and cosmetic enforcement." She offered the paper to me. I signed it, no applause. Just quiet. It didn't need noise to matter. Silra stood beside me, her hand brushing the stone where her mother's name was etched. Owen stood behind her, holding her waist like he knew not to say anything. This wasn't a celebration. This was closure. Marissa looked up. "We're sorry it took this long." I nodded. It didn't take long. It took exactly the right amount of pressure. The board left without ceremony. They knew this wasn't their stage. The story had already played out, and everyone knew who wrote the final chapter. That evening, I sat at my desk and opened the video one more time. The view count had passed 3.2 million. The comments still poured in. Stories, gratitude, fury. One user had posted HOA bylaws from their neighborhood and was organizing a petition. Another had printed Trina's quote and made a sticker that read, "Make an example of this one. Breyer sent me a final message. City Journal wants an interview. Your story's getting legs. They called it a blueprint for HOA reform. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed back, let others run with it. I've said what needed to be said. I walked outside. The air was cooler now. A breeze lifted the edges of the arbor's fabric wrap, the one Silra had refused to remove until everything was over. I took it down myself. The stone beneath was clean, solid, the crack where she'd hit still faintly visible, but sealed. I ran my hand over it and let the silence settle. It wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about making sure no one ever forgot what it cost to let someone like Trina hold unchecked power. I heard footsteps behind me. Levi. He nodded at the arbor. Still standing? So are you. He chuckled. Barely. I've had 3 neighbors ask if I'm running for president. You? I said no. He smirked. Told them I'm better with numbers than microphones. We stood in silence for a moment. She's not coming back, he said finally. She never could. He squinted up at the arch. Funny. I never saw what Mira was building here until it was almost destroyed. That's how it always is, I said. People don't notice the good until someone tries to erase it. He nodded slowly, then turned to leave. We'll keep it better this time. I believed him. Later that night, Silra came out with a small wooden box. She opened it beside me and pulled out a folded scrap of paper, one her mom had written before the first brick was ever laid. Mira's handwriting was faded but legible. Build something no one else will understand until they stand beneath it. Silra whispered, I think she knew. She always did, I said. She pressed the note into the crack in the stone, sealing it behind the final patch of resin. It wasn't tradition. It wasn't regulation. It was truth, buried where no one could legislate it out of existence. We didn't need HOA approval for that. And if you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.